welcome to another 80s golden age of comedy. I am just loving this show. The people that I get to see again after, it's a little mind boggling, I have to admit, 35 years ago, 40 years ago. I mean, I landed on the doorstep of the Improv in 1981. What does that mean? 40 years. 40 years ago. And I got lucky. I hung out with a bunch of real crazy guys like Bruce Smirnoff and Goldstein, Mark Goldstein. And they introduced me to a guy named Barry Martyr. And Barry was writing for everybody. And when Barry heard that I was living with my sister, he says, "Hey, I need a roommate. I need to move closer to Hollywood. And let's be roommates." And I said, "Sure, that sounds great." And we became roommates, and he became my mentor. He was a great guy for me and tried to steer me right. Even though I wanted to go left a lot of times, he wanted to steer me right. I'll give you a for instance. You know, we were living together for maybe 6 months or a year. I really don't remember. But when the Improv and Evening at the Improv exploded all over the country, and he had already introduced me to all the people at the Improv, guys, girls, got to know everybody, got to see them perform. And he said, "Listen, the comedy clubs are opening up everywhere. Why don't you ask them if you could represent them? They don't want to call, and their agencies don't want to call. Maybe they'll let you call if you ask them." I said, "Barry, I don't want to be an agent. Everybody hates their agent. I don't want to be an agent. The agents can't seem to do enough for their clients." I said, "I don't want to be an agent." But Monica Piper and I both know Barry very well. When he gets determined and he sees something that's right, he didn't let it go. And I slowly came around, and we started asking all the people he was writing for and all the people that I got to know. And after a while, I was representing 35 stand-up comedians, which is incredible. And one of the nicest experiences I had was working with a lady named Monica Piper, and she's my guest on today's show. Monica, thank you so much for agreeing to do the show.
I'm thrilled to do it with you, Bruce. And I wasn't Monica Piper back then, remember?
Oh my God, I wasn't going to be the one to say it.
That's okay. I was May Lee Davis. Yeah. Are you Chinese? Yeah, that's why I changed it. I sounded like an Asian country western singer.
Well, there might have been some truth to that. And, some of my fondest memories are of you and Barry sitting in the living room with, his yellow legal pad and you guys figuring stuff out. And I love to hear, he was my roommate. I figured out we must have been roommates for at least 3 or 4 years. At first, I thought it was just a year or two. But when I counted the numbers, we were together for about 3 or 4 years.
No, it was only a year. It just felt like 4 years. No, I'm kidding. I love Barry. We worked together on a game show. I can't remember, 1986, whatever the game show was. It got me in the Writers Guild. So,
okay.
But Barry, he'd be thinking, and we never knew what he was going to say. But every time he knew he had something funny, he'd go, "Oh yeah." That's all he'd say. So everybody be working, and then from his little cubicle, you'd hear, "Oh yeah." That's Barry. He's a really funny guy.
That's funny. The other day, I did a show with Paul Pavenza, and he would tell a story about being in the living room, and he was talking about Eugene Leibowitz and somebody else, and every time. He would say that Barry didn't necessarily love those guys. I think he did, of course. But he would say whenever he got bored, he'd lean over to Paul and just say something in his eye like, "He's full of potatoes," or something like that. And Uh, and people really remember Barry as just one of the funniest guys off stage.
Barry said, when he was talking about Napoleons, how he goes, you never hear anyone order a cheese Hitler. Oh, yeah. I love Barry.
We what a memory to have lived with the guy. And he hasn't done the show yet. He hasn't communicated with me yet. The official word's coming out, Barry. And
yeah, that's more your job than mine. You call him. Well, I got enough on my plate.
So listen, I want to know who Maylee Davis is first. Where did you come from? This gives me a chance to know everyone from places and ways that I never knew. I wouldn't know anything about your personal life. I just knew about who you were as a comedian and a stand-up and a writer. So I don't know anything about you at all. Tell me about you and your family life, especially if it led to getting into comedy.
Totally led to. And yeah, I grew up, my father was possibly the funniest man on the planet.
Wow.
I mean, really funny, comedy funny, not just, funny at parties. He, in the months before my son's bar mitzvah, and he was funny till the end. I said, Dad, this is crazy. Every time I turn around, it's $1,000. He said, don't turn around. That's my father. But growing up, first of all, he was funny, word-wise, but he was really shticky, physical comedy.
Wow.
I mean, honest to God, Bruce, we'd be sitting at the dinner table, and I'd, maybe 5 years old, and I go, Daddy, and he'd go. He did takes. He taught me how to do takes. All the time. He told me later that when I was born and he saw me for the first time, my mother held me up. He went, he did a double take. And, this is true. We'd be in a restaurant. We never went out to dinner where when the check came, my father did not do a check take. He had check takes, but he was the master. Like he'd be wiping his face with a napkin and he'd go. And of course, he would do the triple take. He'd look up the check and he'd go. It was like a cartoon. So he taught me really early to be funny, and we would do little acts together for company. They'd have dinner parties, and but my father actually was in show business before I was born. He had an act. It was called Roy Davis and His Funny Graph, and my father, it's written up in Who's Who in show business. My father was the first person to do a record act, lip syncing to, and I actually have a little visual aid here to show you, and I'll send this to you. Here he is doing his act.
Wow.
On stage. And he was doing really well. He and my mother traveled. They were traveling all over the country.
Wow.
He was opening for Jimmy Dorsey and people like that. And but then I was born. I said to my son when we were doing the lighting, I didn't like it. I went, do I have time to get a tan? Where can I? Anyway, so then I was born. And my mother wanted me to have a more stable life. So she said, we can't go on the road anymore. So, he couldn't really make a living doing what he did in New York. So he gave up show business, but he was so funny. Actually, he became a booking agent for Ray Block.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
Jackie Gleason's orchestra?
Oh, wow.
Well, Ray Block had a big agency in New York where um, they booked acts for big corporate gigs, and he booked Bob Hope, Barbara Streisand, Simon and Garfunkel.
Wow.
So he kept his foot in it. But
Now, did you
yeah,
get a chance to see or be around Jackie?
oh yeah. Oh God. Yeah, when I was little, we would have we had a Jackie Gleason birthday party for me. I was 10, and everybody got a big poor soul doll, all the girls, and that you could put your feet in and dance with. And then we all went to the Jackie Gleason show, and and we all went backstage afterwards
Oh,
to
my
meet him.
gosh.
And you
Wow.
can imagine Jackie Gleason, with a bunch of 10-year-old girls. Yes, hi, nice to meet you. Oh, how cute. Yeah, get me to Toots Shores. Get me out of here. So, yeah.
What a
Well,
nice.
my father's brother was the associate producer of the Honeymooners.
Oh my God. Wow, isn't that
Yeah.
fantastic? So did you get a chance to go on that set?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I don't know if anybody, this is going to make me sound so old, um, but it's true. So I'll tell you. Um, Jackie Gleason had, every year he had a Christmas special, and it was the poor soul in Christmas Land. And they would do a story. There was the poor soul in Storybook Land. And I also went to the June Taylor dancing school.
Ah,
And Jackie Gleason and June Taylor were a thing.
oh, I didn't know.
She was the choreo. Yeah, but they could never get married because he was Catholic, and his wife, he couldn't get divorced. But he and June Taylor were anyway. So I went to the
No,
June.
I like that anyway. You can keep going with that a little bit.
It was all very incestuous. That I went to the June Taylor dancing school. Uncle Stanley was the associate producer, and blah, blah, blah. And so I was on the Jackie Gleason show 3 times. One was in the Christmas special. They had all the dancers, little girl dancers from the June Taylor dancing school. And so I was Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz little ballet thing that the poor soul went through.
Nice.
And then another time, Gordon McRae was on the show singing, "My boy Bill, but what if he is a little girl? My little girl." And then they showed me. So,
Can you
so
find it on YouTube these days?
I looked, I couldn't find it. It was in Kinescope. I don't know if anyone out there can find it. Man, I'd love to see it.
He did a lot of his first shows on that kinescope, and I don't know. I think most of them got trashed, or they never found them. You obviously you're around people like your uncle and Jackie and your dad and all these people in show business. It must have gotten into your blood.
Yeah, well, just being with my father and my mother. My mother was also very funny, but not shticky like him. My mother was more dry, more witty, sarcastic. Um, so I kind of got a lot of the verbal skills, the verbal comedic skills from her, and a lot of the physical shtick from my father. And they would have dinner parties all the time with hilarious people. But my father would just tell stories and have everybody howling. And I talk about it in my play, actually. I talk about my play is about kind of my search for Judaism, and how I realized that my father's religion was humor and my mother's religion was my father. You know, he would tell the same stories to different people and she would laugh every single time.
That's true love.
No matter how often she heard it before, she would laugh.
That's true love.
Yeah, but she was funny. You know, she was sarcastic. I remember years later, I said, Mom, guess what? I'm an actress now. She said, well, that's fabulous. What are you in? Well, I don't have a movie or a play or a series or anything, but I'm an actress. You know, sweetie, that's such a coincidence because I'm a queen. I just don't happen to have a country. So that was my mother's. She did have a joke. She had, can I say a dirty word on this?
Sure.
She had one joke that she would tell at parties. And my father thought it was the funniest thing he ever heard. So it would, but it was like a setup, you know. My father would say to her, Fritzy, darling, tell them your joke. And she'd go, I can't, David. It's too dirty. And he'd go, come on, Fritzy. She'd go, well, okay. But here's what I'll do. For the F word, I'll say flambe. And for the S word, I'll say sherbet. Okay, everybody? Flambe, sherbet. Okay, so these two cocksuckers walk into a restaurant. That was her joke. And everyone would owl.
Oh, that's great. Where did you go from there? Where did you go from being funny and saying to yourself, I want to be something in this, something funny in the world? Where did it take you next?
I did what I was supposed to. I knew I was funny, but I did what I was supposed to. I became I went to college, became a teacher. You know, I became a high school English teacher. But I do remember the first time I ever told a joke and people laughed. It was, I was still in high school. I was in 10th grade. And Mr. Cooper, my math teacher, passed out papers and announced, today we're having a little pop quizzy. That's what he called it. He called them quizzies. So anyway, he said, today we're having a little pop quizzy. So I swear to God, I looked at it and said, wow, if these are your quizzies, I'd hate to see your testes. Everybody. I swear to God, that was my first joke.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You know, and everybody laughed except Mr. Cooper. He didn't laugh. I swear to you, Bruce, he wrote the joke out on a discipline report. He wrote the whole joke out on a discipline report and sent it to the principal, who called my parents, and the principal's telling my father the joke. And he's like all serious. Really? She said that? Well, I will certainly have a word with her. And then he says, kid, you're funny. So I knew, but I didn't have the guts. I don't know. It's not that I didn't have the guts. It's not like I thought about it and said, no, I'm too scared. It just never occurred to me that that was a possibility of a way to go. I was supposed to be a teacher, get married and do all that. So I became a high school English teacher. You know, I did that for a while.
And you know, Kathy Ladman had a similar story. You know, she knew she was funny at 7. And then she let 10 years go by because It wasn't the right thing, wasn't proper thing to do.
Exactly. I know. We've talked about it. And she talks about loving Nichols and May and doing that doctor routine. And it's so funny that she acted that out. And Sue doing Humphrey Bogart
Oh,
and John Kennedy, JFK when she's 6.
oh,
Sue's story about meeting an agent when
oh.
she's 6 years old, and she goes, "All right, where do I sign on the dotted line?" You know,
That nothing is funnier than that.
nothing. Well, Sue, anytime if I'm stuck with a joke, I need a joke, or I need help with a joke, I call my girl Sue, I call Kathy, and another great friend of ours, Debbie Casper, and they always come up with they help me hone a joke. It's great.
So, how did you take that step towards show business?
Well, I was a teacher. I got married, and I joined an improv group in I was living in San Francisco at the time, and actually, I didn't join it right away. I was teaching and said, but I started going to the Holy City Zoo, where all the great San Francisco. That's where Robin came up, Dana Carvey came up out of there. Really funny guy, Jim Giovanni, A. Whitney Brown.
Oh, yeah, Whitney Brown. Wow.
Jeremy Kramer. I'd watch Stephen Pearl, hilarious. I'd watch these guys, and I think, well, maybe I could do that. But I was teaching school and teaching high school, and then I think back on it and I go, this is like, the leap wouldn't be that great because I'm doing 5 sets a day. In high school, I got hecklers. I know how to deal with this. At the time, my marriage was not. It was having some problems, and I was telling my husband and I were out to dinner with some people, and I was telling a funny little anecdote like my father would, and my husband, right in the middle of it, got up and went to the bar. I'm like, what? I was embarrassed, And later I said, how could you do that? You couldn't wait 2 minutes, He said, well, I heard that one once before. And that's when I thought about my mother, who laughed at my father every single time. And then he said to me, did it ever occur to you that maybe you're just not that funny?
Ooh.
I'm like, what?
Ooh.
And I divorced him 3 months later. How dare you? So actually, that's when I started going to the Holy City Zoo and really looking for, I said, fuck, of course I'm funny. I know I'm funny. So I answered an ad in the pink section. There was an ad in the pink section of the San Francisco Chronicle, which is like their art, like the calendar section. So it said, looking for comedians, looking for funny people for a comedy troupe. What I didn't tell you was I lived in Chicago for a couple of years and before San Francisco, and I studied with Second City, and it was fabulous. I did their workshops, their improv workshops, and I got in their Sunday show, which was not their regular great, the troupe. It was like, the minors, but I loved it. I loved doing improv. So back in San Francisco, when I answered that ad, I thought it was for improv. When they said comedy troupe, I thought that's what they meant. So I remember it was in Berkeley, and I drove there and I showed up. It turns out he said, "Oh no, this isn't improv. This is stand up." And I went, "Well, I don't do stand up. I just do improv." And he said, "Well, get on stage. Let's see what you can do." It was this huge, big place. And I said, but there's no one to improv with." And he said, "Well, just get up there and do something, do something." So I swear, so I went up there and I honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just riffing off everything I saw. There was a light, a string from a light bulb hanging. So, and it had a knob at the end. So suddenly I was a female astronaut who couldn't find her tampon. It went up in the air, gravity. It was like I was doing horrible, ridiculous stuff. But he goes, "All right, you're funny. Go to the spaghetti factory Friday night. In between the comedians, you're gonna do improv with another guy." So I said, "Okay, great." So I show up, and the other guy is Robin.
Oh my God.
Before he was a star. It was just me and him. I had no idea who he was. He had no idea who I was. So we just started doing improv. We did really funny Shakespeare stuff. You know, we had a blast. And he said, "You're funny. Uh, Mei Li, what a funny Chinese, what are you, a Chinese Jewish woman?" You know, so he brought me to the Holy City Zoo and wanted me to work with that improv group. And so we did. And it was Sons of the Sunset. We did it for like 3 years. And
Wow. Behind the scenes, who was Robin Williams? There's a lot of different people that have a lot of different, he was quiet, he was shy, he's not that character, that broad character that you see on TV. Tell me about what you remember about Robin.
Well, we would rehearse at my house. I had a house in San Francisco, and amazingly enough, I still have that house in San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah, I bought it in 1976.
Wow.
But yeah, anyway, and so we would rehearse down there, and it was Jose Simon. You San Francisco people who are listening, you'll know these people. Jose Simon, Buzz Belmondo, Kathy Keeley, myself, and Robin. And so we would have the rehearsals at my house. And the first thing he would do is open the refrigerator and eat anything that I had. Didn't care if it was the last one, anything. Didn't care.
He was a hungry comedian like so many were.
Oh God. But he was obviously a genius, obviously funny, but wasn't always on, which is nice. There's nothing worse than a comedian that won't stop being a comedian when they're in real life. And he was very natural. He was very kind, very thoughtful, very generous, and just came up. We would put our heads together, come up with funny ideas for bits, and he was great. It was a great time. And Kathy Keeley and Buzz Belmondo, whose real name was Lorenzo Matawan, they fell in love during that time, and they end up living with me in the house. So we all lived in the house except for Robin, and it was just a great time. We'd go on at the very end of the night at the Holy City Zoo after watching all the comics, and Robin would get up, of course, and do his thing before we would do our thing. And then he left, got really famous really fast, and he got the Richard Pryor show, which he did, and then Mork and Minnie, and but he'd come back to San Francisco every year for Comedy Day, and we all would. And I was a stand-up by then, and always, Mei Li, my little Jewish Chinese girl, and I was already Monica Piper, but anyway, That's it. Those are my Robin stories.
Wow.
You know, you hear a lot of stories of people who knew him after he was famous, but there's a lot of us who knew him before he was famous. And he was just, I think the most important thing I can say about him was that he was so generous, really generous.
You know, with all the interviews that I've done, I'm over 30 now. I've never heard one person say a bad word about him. Now, we all knew he got a little carried away with certain things, you know, in the 80s, which was unfortunate, but there was not one person who has ever said a negative word about Robin.
No, you really can't.
So what happened after that? What happened after those days in San Francisco and before, you know, what was the movement after that?
The movement was, I knew after after I was divorced and my husband didn't think I was funny. Um, I knew that I was going to go and prove to myself and everybody else that I was funny. So I became a singing waitress at a place in the valley called Poppy Star. Many people may know of it from in LA as Great American Food and Beverage Company. It
Oh,
was a great restaurant where all the waiters and waitresses sang. And at the original on Wilshire in Santa Monica, Katie Seagal worked there. She was a singer. Um, Michael Winslow, the sound effects guy.
let me take me back to San Francisco when you said to yourself, "I'm going to LA." And how was that process?
I said, um, I'm done here. I need to see, I need to see how funny I really am. You know, I mean, I need to work. See, I was very comfortable knowing I was funny doing improv, but stand up is something I'd watched it so many times at the Holy City Zoo. And, you know, really great comics, Mark Pitta, funny guys, you know, funny Paula Poundstone. Oh my God. She was the funniest woman I'd ever seen. And I said, I think I can do this. I think I can do this. So I was really lucky because I got a job as a singing waitress. The guy that owned them, a guy named Poppy, sold them all and opened this giant place in Encino called Poppy Star. So I was a singing waitress there. And, but I would do funny shtick. Uh, at the, um, I would sell the men in the audience like cars, like Sal Worthington or Cal Worthington. Remember, I'd go, "Hi, I'm Sal Worthington, and this used to be my dog Spot." You know, it was a big fur coat, stupid, big giant cowboy hat. I'll send you a picture. I have a
What year
picture.
was this? What year?
This was 80, 80. So, or no, 70, 79.
Yeah.
This was 79. And so, but then late at night for the late night crowd, I'd sit on top of the piano and the busboy would play the blues. I mean, everybody, the busboys, the waiters, the cashiers, like we'd do these big group numbers and the cashiers would pick up a tambourine and the waiters would run, the busboys would play piano, whatever. And I would sit on top of the piano and I would sing the blues, but I would do a talking blues. I would sing. And then meanwhile, during the day, I was writing jokes. So I would sit on the piano and try out these jokes. And they were lame jokes. You know, I was living in Venice Beach. So I'd say, I live in Venice. Yeah. So I can't remember how it would, you know, and I'm a New Yorker, an ex-New Yorker, you know, living in Venice, you know, come on, you want to go to the movies? No, I got to mail a letter today. You know, like not great stuff. But I would so I would write during the day. I was determined to try to do stand up. So I'd write during the day, but I was so lucky because I didn't have to go to clubs and bomb and bomb and bomb to start out. I had my job. I could just do it there at this place in front of an audience. So I knew what was working, what wasn't working. And so I put together 5, 10 minutes and I auditioned at the Comedy Store. And I got in, and that was 1980.
Okay.
And she put me in the belly room, and that's where I met Sue Kolinsky. And that's how long we've been friends. So, oh man, Lotus Weinstock, Lois Bromfield, Diane Nichols. I mean, Joanne Deering, Lucy Webb, just Janice Hart. I don't know if you remember Janice Hart.
I don't.
Yeah, we lost her this year. She was so funny, so funny. It wasn't her act that was. I mean, she did impressions of Tina Turner. She's this blonde, she did Dinah Shore. She said, "Hi, I'm Dinah Shore. I died in 1949." She was, but what was so funny about her was off stage. She was like really hyper. She was, "We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it, honey. I just know we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. I'm just so tired." That was her. I loved her. Anyway.
What about Joanne Deering? I don't know. I haven't heard anything about her at all.
Oh, we're Facebook friends. I haven't seen her in so many years. And Karen Babbitt, I love her. I saw, and Carrie Snow, of course.
Yes.
Carrie Snow was, I just became friends with these hilarious women. And then we actually, a lot of us saw each other for the first time in years at Mitzi's memorial.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was quite a night.
Oh, I bet. Tell me about that.
Oh, God. Every comic was there. Every comic. Everybody was there. It was, it was amazing. So, yeah, but I soon, after about a year in the belly room, then I started working out also. Oh, I was also a waitress. I was a waitress at Poppy Star 3 nights a week. I would perform in the belly room probably 3 nights a week. But I was also a cocktail waitress at the Laugh Stop, which was not far from Poppy's in Encino. And that's when I met Howard Trussman. Did you know? Howard Trussman worked out of the Laugh Stop in Encino, and he booked the Laugh Stops around the country.
Wow.
There was big one in Houston. So yeah, there were Laugh Stops all over the place. So I'm cocktail waitress. I got drinks in my hand, and I'm watching Elaine Boozler and Gary Shandling. Wow. And I mean, I'm watching David Letterman. I'm watching everybody. I mean, at the Laugh Stop, but I'm watching Elaine Boozler, and I'm like, oh my God. And at that moment, I really had a decision to make. Will I ever be as good as that? Because if I'm not going to be as good as that, then I don't even know if I should try, So I had a choice: give up because I'll never be as good as that, or keep trying so I can be as good as that, or hope to be as good as that. So Elaine Boozler was a huge inspiration to me, because she was not just because she was a female who was brilliant and obviously hilarious, but because she was also sexy too. I mean, she wasn't self-deprecating. She wasn't making fun of herself. She wasn't, it wasn't she wasn't wearing a facade of any kind. And I really dug that. So
Did you get to know her at all?
not really, not then, not that well, not then. I was a waitress.
Yeah.
I wasn't a comic. So Howard Trustman, I said, Howard, you've watched me serve drinks now for 6 months. I want to audition for you. And so I auditioned for him. And I had already been working out in the belly room, so I had some chops and working out at the restaurant. So he sent me on my first road gig. It was the Laugh Stop in Newport Beach.
Wow.
45 minutes from my house, but I packed my suitcase and went on the road. And I stayed in the comedy condo. And that's when it's not till you're really in a club every night and the other comics are hearing your act and you don't want to do the same thing every night. And that really inspired me to write. So
you remember who you were working with that time?
Yeah, David, oh my God, my brain. David Say.
David, I knew you were going to say David Say, yeah.
David Say was the headliner. And so, now I'm meeting the New York comics. And I worked with him. And then from then on, I became a road comic for a long time, and I worked with so many great people. I have great stories of being on the road. First, I was obviously an opening act, and then I became a middle act. And it was funny. It was tough in the comedy condos, the middle act and the opening act usually shared a room, and the headliner had his own room. So because I was a woman, it was like they had to figure it out, is she going to stay in a room with me? Do I have to, or is the headliner going to give up the bedroom? And some of them did and some of them didn't, but it was fun.
Tell me about Carrie Snow. I was kind of friendly with her. I had a lot of fun with her. Tell me about working with her or her comedy.
Oh my God. Well, first of all, she thinks funny. Some people are, they've got their act and they can just turn it on when they're on stage and they're hilariously funny. But then some people are like, really dour. Some comics are like depressing to be
We don't
around.
know anybody like that. I know.
No.
Nobody we know.
But Carrie was just always funny, but not on, not trying to be funny, just funny because she's smart. She's got such a great brain that just sees the world as funny or sees the world from a point of view. That's what all the great comics do. You see something from a point of view that other people, that civilians don't see. I love working with Carrie.
Yeah. And, we know that she's had some medical issues and we all pray for her and hope the best for her to continue.
Carrie's back. Carrie's going to come back. Yeah. She's still funny on Facebook, and she's got so many people who love her and are rooting for her. So Carrie's great.
We did a radio show with her. I did a radio show with her probably about 6 months before she took ill. And I don't know. I think there was something wrong then. I didn't know what. She'd be saying stuff to me like, why am I doing your show? What am I doing here? And I'm sure she hopefully
sounds pretty lucid to me.
right. Well, Murray said the same thing last week, so I'm kind of getting used to it.
I mean, it's just fun to shoot the shit with someone about the days,
Yeah. And tell me,
I was in a gig. I was in Sacramento in just for laughs. Was that the name of the?
Sounds familiar.
Anyway, yeah, that was a great gig. Scott Edwards, he ran a great room, and the comics all went there and loved him. And I was still a middle act, and I was on the road with Larry Miller, who's the headliner. Oh my God, Larry, funniest guy. And he'd walk around in his boxer shorts in the condo. And I love you, Larry, if you're watching. I love you, but not so much what I needed to see before lunch. So anyway, he'd walk around. And one time, oh my God, I can't remember who it was. It might have been me, actually, but someone made a very stinky poopy in the bathroom, and there was no air freshener. And so you can only pray that no one's going to go in there for 5 minutes. And sure enough, 20 seconds later, Larry goes in there, and he did an about face. He came out and said, I am concerned because someone here needs a new colon. Something like that.
By the way, Larry, if you are watching, I want you to do the show. I've had everybody around you, so it's time to come in and do the show, Larry.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I loved, the roles that he got in movies. Pretty Women was priceless. I just love seeing him in that. And did
you ever see him? Did you ever see him as the murdering the club owner, the comedy club owner on Law and Order? They called him back.
No.
He was so good. He murdered his wife, and set up another comic, so it looked like the comic did it.
Wow.
And it's fabulous, Law and Order. And they brought him back for a different one, another season, where he murdered his second wife. And same guy. And Larry plays a great bad guy.
Whoa.
Oh, I mean, that's what I love to see when a comic, like I'm just obsessed with Better Call Saul right now. I'm behind a lot of people watching it. So good. Bob Odenkirk is just
brilliant. Yeah.
It's so good. That show is so good. And I remember way back, Saint Elsewhere, that show?
Well, Howie Mandel, who was my client, was on Saint Elsewhere.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, I would watch that show and say, that is my idea for me of making it. What I want to be the comedic, the comic relief on a brilliant drama show, on a hit drama show, and to be the comic relief character on that show. And I so envied Howie's position on Howie's work on that show. I don't mean envy in a bad way. I mean, you did it, buddy. That's what I want.
And what was so fantastic about that was that, I saw him at the Comedy Store, and I just approached him and I said, Howie, can I get you some gigs? He was kind enough to say yes, but I bring the story up for a reason. He was on St. Elsewhere, and Johnny had him on, and of course he was brilliant on Johnny, and they noticed that every time that he was on, St. Elsewhere gained a point in the ratings. So Johnny would have him on like every 4 or 5 or 6 weeks, and the ratings kept going up and up. And Howie got to announce where he was going to be performing the gigs that I might have gotten him. So we both, raised the. I didn't make him a star by any means, but he helped to raise my stature a little bit.
That's great.
Tell me about the last few years. The 2020 is a throwaway. What's been going on with you in the last few years that we could talk
Oh
about?
my God. Well, I wrote a play called Not That Jewish, and it was produced here by the Jewish Women's Theater. And Rhonda Spinak, the artistic director of the Jewish Women's Theater, kind of oversaw the whole thing. And I performed here. We did it here. It ran for 16 months.
Wow.
Yeah, it was selling out like crazy. And then a New York producer heard about it and flew out to see it. And he said, I want to put this up in New York. So we opened in the very end of 2016, and it ran most of 2017 off Broadway at New World Stages.
Wow.
And I'm extremely proud of it. Hey, see, I got this. Wait, I got
more.
Wait, wait a minute here. I got this.
Oh,
a poster. No, it's really, it's my story, but it's not stand up with furniture. It's a real play about something. And I'm really proud of it. I talk about growing up with my funny family. I talk about my marriage falling apart. I talk about the adoption of my son. It all stems from when I'm 7. I say, when I was growing up, we didn't belong to a temple, but on the high holy days, my mother would make us dress up and stand in front of the apartment building so it looked like we just got home from temple. So we're doing that and it's working. And then one of my I was 7, and my 7-year-old neighbor, Carol Bengelsdorf, that's her.
You can't make that up.
No, that's a real person. And as a matter of fact, I haven't seen her since junior high school. And apparently she heard about my play and she said, I hear you're portraying me as this little obnoxious Nazi, blah, blah, blah. No. Anyway, so I should have changed her name. But anyway, she said, did you really go to temple? And I go, not really. And she goes, then you're not really Jewish. What? Yes, I am. My mommy and daddy and aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas are Jewish. She goes, well, okay, I guess, but you're not that Jewish. So the rest of the play is an exploration of, what it means to be not that Jewish. And after I have a son and realize I want to raise a Jewish man, I kind of get into it more.
That's beautiful.
But it's also about my first, there's a scene where I'm auditioning at the Comedy Store. There's a scene where I'm on the road with my kid. I took him on the road with me for years when he was a baby. Wow. I just hand him to a bouncer. Here, hold this. Do my thing. Anyway, so I've been doing that. And I'm actually writing the book I'm going back and enhancing the whole thing and turning it into a memoir. And Sue Kalinsky and I are writing partners, and we're working together on a fabulously funny and moving animated movie.
Oh, fantastic. Wow.
So
So could the play move from city to city or place to place or
absolutely,
temple to temple?
we're setting up a tour. Yes, trust me. There was someone wanted it down in Boca, to run. We're all set to take it on tour to theaters, Jewish organizations all over the country. But then COVID came, and so we're going to start looking into the 2022 season.
So please, let's talk more about that after the show, because
Right.
I have some thoughts on it.
Great.
And I so appreciate you being with me today. This was just fantastic. Is there anything else that you haven't said that you wanted to say before we
do
go?
want to tell you a really great story of being on the road with myself, Richard Belzer, and John Byner.
Oh my God.
Funniest. I mean, to me, aside from Richard Pryor, one of and George Carlin, one of the funniest geniuses of all time. And I was still a middle act back then. And actually, I was the opening act because Belzer was the middle act and John Byner was the head. And every night we would hold court in John Byner's hotel room after the show, or we go down to the coffee shop. So we go down to the coffee shop one night, and David Fry, whose now career was not
the biggest back then.
Yeah, but by then, the waning years of his career where he wasn't so big. And he's sitting in the coffee shop and he's drunk. And he comes over and sits at the table with us, with Richard, with Belzer and John Byner. And he goes, John Byner, you know why I never made it when, you're so successful and I'm not? Because every night, my parents would call me a piece of shit. And I didn't grow up feeling loved, and they called me a piece of shit. And that's why I'm a success. I'm not a success, and you are. And Byner doesn't miss a beat. He goes, yeah, it was different at my house. My parents called you a piece of shit.
John is still, I hear he's still doing like podcasts. I think he did Gilbert's show.
He was so funny. Oh my God.
So Mei Lee, I know you're a great writer because I knew that from.
Don't call me Mei Lee.
Oh shit! I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Don't call me Mei Lee. Okay.
No, it's funny. There's certain people who still know me as Mei Lee.
Okay, here we go.
I got to tell you something really quick, really funny. Yeah. I went from because I have never changed it legally. It just became, even my passport says Mei Lee Davis, also known as Monica Piper. So, but it expired. So anyway, I went for my COVID shot, and my insurance is all Monica Piper, but my driver's license says Mei Lee Davis.
Oh my God.
So I had to prove that I was Monica Piper. So I actually have it still right here. So I worked on a game show called Show Me the Money. So I showed them my badge that said Monica Piper. So anyway, all right.
So Monica, I know you're a fantastic writer. I know that when you were writing with Barry in my apartment. And I know you've had a whole career of writing that others couldn't even imagine having. Tell me about that.
I had been on the road with my son, who was a baby, and then he got older. And by the time he was almost 3, it was time for him to go to preschool and start. So I had to get off the road. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And I get a call out of the blue. Hey, Monica, it's Roseanne. So I'm like,
Oh my God.
now I knew her from
Right.
we were friends
The
before.
belly room. The belly room.
No, I knew her before that. I knew her. I was a headlining in Denver, and she was an open micer. She said, "Oh, you got so much material. You wanna write together?" So I went, "Yeah, sure." I was so bored at that gig. So because they put you up out in the sticks at the owner's house, and he was a lovely man, but you know there was nothing to do. So we started writing together. Anyway, long story short, we became friends. Then she came out to LA and was obviously, doing great at the Comedy Store and all that. And then she got famous immediately, and her show was the number one show. But we hadn't spoken in years. And all of a sudden, hey Monica, it's Roseanne. I heard about the baby. Congratulations. That's so cool. So I went, well, thank you. Anyways, I, it was, we need a strong female voice on the show. We want you to write on the show. That's when she was with Tom Arnold. So I'm thinking, wow, are you kidding me? It's like one of those moments where your life is literally about to change.
Yeah.
I could get off the road. I could earn sitcom money.
Wow.
I could have a stable life for Jake, and we could get off the road. And so, of course, sure. So, but then I realized once I was on staff and we were there till 4 a.m, that what she didn't tell me was, oh, and that cute baby of yours, well, you're never ever gonna see him again. So it was torture. I was on the number one show in the country. I love being in a sitcom room. There's nothing greater than pitching a joke that gets in a script. But on the other hand, I was tortured because I had a baby at home, and I mean, I wasn't seeing him. It was killing me. So after that, my agent said, you cannot quit. No matter what you do, you cannot quit. You can get fired from Roseanne, because everybody gets fired from Roseanne. You can get fired from Roseanne, but you can't quit. So I stuck out the year, and then I started working in animation because the hours were so much different and better. So I got a freelance gig working on Duckman. I don't know if anybody ever saw it. It was the funniest. It was with Jason Alexander. Hilarious adult animated show. And then and one thing led to another. I started working on Rugrats and Wild Thornberrys, and then I became the head writer of Rugrats. And a year after that, ta-da!
Woo! Wow!
Best children's animated series.
Wow!
So that was exciting.
Congratulations! That's spectacular.
Thank you.
Great.
Oh, and Mad About You. And right in the middle of all that,
another favorite show.
Mad About You was my favorite show at the time. And that was one of the best jobs I ever had. So
and there's one other show that you worked on.
Oh, Veronica's Closet.
No? Dream On.
Oh, no, I didn't say I worked on it. I said I wrote. That was my very first spec script.
Oh, wow.
I love that show so much that I wrote a script.
Oh.
And I submitted it, and that's what got me work.
Oh.
Other shows.
That's one of my favorite shows with Brian Benton.
Hilarious. Hilarious.
It's too bad that they don't show that now. I know it's HBO's show.
Such a brilliant show. So funny. I loved it. And I read that spec script every now and then. It still stands up. It's a great script.
Oh, that's
You
great. And it
know,
was written by someone who was a waitress at the Improv for a while, who went on to great success, Eileen Kahn.
Eileen Kahn, brilliant writer, married to Larry Miller,
Wow.
and she wrote on Mad About You before the season or two before I did. So yeah.
Fantastic. We go back a long time, and
Oh yeah.
I got I got to know you as close as I got to know any of the female comedians, and I love working with you all. It didn't always work out, but it was great getting to know you again after all these years. You're
I know.
terrific. You're so funny. I'm so glad that that we connected here again,
Me
and
too.
thanks so much. I couldn't appreciate it more.
I had a blast. Thanks.
God bless. We'll see everybody again on the next 80s golden age of comedy. Bye bye, Monica Piper, Maylee Davis. God bless. See you again soon. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.